ThreatLocker's endpoint security gives you control over what happens on your endpoints and your servers using a zero trust approach. Deployment is simple. You can simply click install new computer. We have various options from MSI to stub installer or scripts, and you can also deploy natively through an RMM or software deployment tool. ThreatLocker's first component is our Application Allowlisting component. Application Allowlisting allows you to choose what software runs on your environment and blocks everything else. When you first deploy the ThreatLocker agent, ThreatLocker begins to audit everything that's running in your environment, every executable, every DLL, and every script file, who called the application, what process, and who it was signed by. Within a couple of hours of deploying, ThreatLocker starts to automatically build a policy set that's based on your environment, so the software that you need is allowed. If you see something in this policy set you don't like, you can simply deny it. This is visible in the unified audit. ThreatLocker uses this information to learn what is required in your environment. After about a week of learning, you can simulate your environment, you can see if anything that would have been denied that shouldn't be denied, and then you can lock down your computer just by changing it to secured mode. Once your computer is locked down, nothing can run in your environment that isn't explicitly trusted, that doesn't have a policy. That means no ransomware can run, malware can run, and it doesn't matter if it's opened by a user or at the endpoint. If a user does need to introduce software into the environment, they can request access. They'll get this simple pop-up and they can send a request. As an IT administrator, you will receive that request on your phone, on your email, in a business ticketing system, and you can approve it very simply. In this case, the user has requested Business App 23, which I don't know what is. If I wanted to look at the software first, I have the option to run it in a ThreatLocker VDI. So in this case, I'm going to open the software in the VDI, and I'm going to see what the software does. We can see here, within a few moments of opening the software, these red lights come up to indicate that the software is changing my files on the system, there's flags in VirusTotal, and it's making system changes. So I don't want to permit the software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to discard it. Now, if the user did need to run the software, they could request that, and it was legitimate software, we could equally approve that request. So in this case, the user is going to request access to PuTTY. When they request access to PuTTY, me as the administrator can see, oh, this is PuTTY, I want to allow this in my environment. I can see that ThreatLocker recognizes it, and we're going to track future updates. I can permit it, and in this case, I'm going to permit it for all computers in the group, which probably isn't necessary, but just for demonstration purposes. Within about 60 seconds, the user will receive a pop-up notifying them they can run the software. In addition to controlling what can run in your environment, ThreatLocker can also control what it can do with our ring-fencing technology. Ring-fencing essentially says, well, what can an application do once it's running? So for example, Microsoft Office might be permitted in your environment, and PowerShell might be permitted, but that doesn't mean we need PowerShell to be accessible or called from Microsoft Office. So this out-of-the-box policy defines exactly what PowerShell can do and what Office can do. In this case, we've said PowerShell is allowed to run, but PowerShell is a very powerful tool that can be used to steal data, upload things to the internet. So what we've done is we've limited its file access so it can't see our protected files, our network shares, our documents folder, and it can't go out to the internet. We can also limit its application interaction and what changes it can make to the registry. By limiting what applications can do, we essentially prevent vulnerable or misused applications being used against us. Whether it's an exploit or a vulnerability, if you take away an application's ability to access your files, it can't steal your data or encrypt your files. You've probably got over 500 applications on your computer. How many of those? Probably 5% of them need to see your data. So just by taking away that ability hardens your environment. The next thing I want to show you is our elevation capability. Sometimes software needs to run as a local admin. In this case, I'm going to use Notepad++ as an example. I can simply change the policy here to allow this program to run as an admin, and even if the user isn't a local admin, they can open Notepad++ as an admin, and it's completely seamless. The user doesn't know anything different. They get a pop-up in this case saying it's been elevated, and they can run the program as per usual, as an admin. Now, one of the challenges with elevation software is it allows a program to run as an admin and potentially allows that user to then hop to other applications. With ThreatLocker, our elevation software integrates seamlessly with our ring fencing, so you can say this software is allowed, it's integrated with ring fencing, but it's not allowed to talk to any other applications while it's running as an admin. This prevents application hopping in its elevated state. The next thing I want to show you very quickly is our storage control. Now, our storage control could be something as simple as blocking USB drives. So in here, we have a policy that denies USB drives from being accessed, period. And if a user gets something denied, they'll get a pop-up. So in this case, the user tries to access a USB drive, they hit request, and you as the admin, IT admin, can approve that request within 60 seconds. But I can go beyond just blocking USB drives. In this case here, we have a policy that allows access to my Veeam backup share only from the Veeam application. So if an attacker was to get on my system and try and change my backups or delete my backups, they wouldn't be able to do it because only the Veeam application has it. Another advantage of storage control is we have the ability to fully audit all file access. So if I want to know what happened to this custom file, I can search back over time and say, show me the full history of this file. I can see here who read this file, wrote this file, changed this file, deleted this file, whether it was permitted or denied. In this case, I can see that the user did various things with the file, finally deleting it, but before that, they actually tried to copy it to a USB drive. I can even see that USB drive wasn't encrypted. The storage control audit is very, very seamless and works effectively whether your users are in or out of the office. The next thing I want to touch on is our network access control. Our network access control, much like the storage control, gives you full visibility of all network traffic in and out of your organization. So I can see every network call, whether it was permitted, whether it was denied, right here in the unified audit for all my endpoints across the world. I can also set up firewall rules to deny traffic. So if you don't want your engineers or your users opening RDP on their personal computers or their business computers while they're at home, you can block all inbound traffic, which is pretty typical on an endpoint firewall. Now, we can see the unified audit and make exceptions if we need to. From a server side, we have much more power. So if we think about servers and endpoint firewalls, they become very problematic because when you're on your network, you need your laptops to be able to access your file server. So here I can turn on a policy to allow file server traffic to my file server. But what I can do here is I can actually set a dynamic policy. So when people come into the office, they could be rogue laptops, they could be IoT devices, they could connect to my network. And if they don't have a full traditional NAT solution that integrates into my switches, they're going to be able to get on and see my server. What I can do here from the server point of view is say dynamically update the ACLs to only allow my workstations group, only allow Danny's laptop to access this file server. So even when I come on the network with a DHCP address, it'll update that ACL in real time. And if someone comes in with a rogue laptop, they won't be able to see those ports. This is very, very effective and much easier than using a traditional NAT solution, which requires hardware addresses and is unaffordable for companies that don't have massive complex networks. The next thing we can do with the network access control is we can actually set remote policies for remote computers too. So in this case, I've set up a remote desktop gateway. I've got dual factor authentication. I've used port 443, but I still don't want to open that port to the entire world. So what I've done is I've set a policy to only allow my workstation to access it. Now my public IP address changes based on where I am in the world and based on whether I'm traveling. If I'm at home, my home address is dynamic. But in this case, NAC will automatically update that policy in real time. So rather than allowing 4 billion IP addresses, we allow a limited number. This is a very quick walkthrough of some of the power we've got in ThreatLocker. If you want to do a deep dive, find out more, go to our website, threatlocker.com, and just schedule a demo and see how powerful ThreatLocker can be. Thank you very much for your time.